Hey guys, welcome to another commentary done by Diggity. This is going to be the 5th set of SKT versus Hwasong Oz. We have Fantasy versus Hiya. Again, sorry for the tardiness and all these, using the last bit of my weekend to try to get out as many commentaries as possible. Should probably eat somewhere in between here. Bottom left-hand corner we have Hiya, bottom right-hand corner we have Fantasy, and even though Hiya, I would say, is not as skilled as Fantasy is, he has been in this situation before, and he's pretty clutch. I think he can pull stuff out like this. And really, I think even though Fantasy has beaten Jaedong before, in the last, the day before that play on Outsider, I don't think they ever want to see Jaedong in an ace match, just because he is so clutch. He is a very strong player. This is going to be on Neo Harmony, which is an interesting map just because it's difficult to get any sort of contained position play. It tends to be really confusing, I would say, for a Terran player. Well, not confusing. It tends to be difficult because you've got two entrances. You've got that north entrance, you've got that south entrance. So going for tank contains can be all the more difficult. And it's just, I like the architecture, actually. I think it creates for fun games, even though, and it makes Terran versus Terran all the more interesting. And I know that's kind of odd to say. Most people don't like Terran versus Terran as a matchup. I think on Neo Harmony, it makes fun matches. It's also one of those maps where taking your third can be extremely difficult, which seems to be, I don't know what's with the map makers recently. Hey, I don't care. I think that's a white guy right there, judging by the arms. Way to go. Looks like both players doing something pretty standard. I'm not seeing that. Yeah, both putting the supply depot down. It's conceivable we could see a 14cc, but I feel like it's more risky on this map than others because it's difficult to defend your secondary. Very difficult to defend your secondary. And gas before barracks here for Hiya. So Hiya probably aiming to do some sort of tech push. He could be thinking about either 2 factory or he might be doing that vulture drop. Both tend to be pretty, I would say, solid on this map. Conceivably, he could open up with Wraith. There's that barracks. A little bit off-center going to the forward position. When Fantasy enters the base, he's not really going to know. That's one thing about doing this. 3 SCV on gas, in fact. The nice thing about this is also he can kind of confuse Fantasy or kind of trick him by pulling the SCVs off gas and then putting them right back on, and it doesn't end up in too bad a position. So you might want to actually build 2 Marines to start to try to catch that SCV scout as quickly as possible. Really, it's going to be critical for Fantasy to scout as quickly as possible to limit kind of the gas time. So let's see if he goes to the left first or if he goes to the right first. It looks like he is headed to the north. So this is definitely going to work out for Hiya. Fantasy going for a pretty standard build himself. It looks like a nice CJ. Oh, that's the CJ team, it looks like, in portion. At least I think. I think I saw a couple players in there. And it looks like Fantasy is setting up for a fast expansion, so he is going to end up a little bit vulnerable to whatever Hiya is doing. Hiya is at the very least going to have an opportunity here. SCV Scout actually circling around, so never mind, it looked like it was headed to the north. Now it's coming back around to the left. The Marine not in time to block the SCV Scout, so Hiya is in fact going to have to take SCV on gas. He is going to see that factory building a little bit faster than normal. And there's the SCV, yeah, being pulled off gas. And this is, again, a very clever maneuver from Hiya. And keep in mind, Fantasy's going to think, oh, he doesn't have that much gas in the bank. But when he comes back, when he actually has more gas in the bank than he's really showing here, the SCV Scout still pinned in the corner. This is critical. There's the second Marine. And let's see if they can pin him in. And Fantasy's going to draw that SCV out. And let's watch Hiya if he decides to put those SCV right back on gas. And that'll be the critical indicator here. Barracks now floating up, and Fantasy not putting down a machine shop right away, interestingly enough. So it looks like he's going to try to go Vulture Force and 2 starports. Wow, okay, so Hiya, yeah, he's got the 3 SCV back on gas. Now he's going to go for 2 starports with some sort of factory tech to kind of supplement. Maybe vultures here. The SCV just kind of hanging outside to try to be kind of a wayward scout. He needs to be a little bit wary. Hiya not able to get his own scout in there. Okay, looks like that SCV scout was killed. And Fantasy just taking his expansion on the ground. That's going to leave him very vulnerable. And this is going to be critical. Will Fantasy have any sort of anti-air out in the field? He only has a single Marine on the ground. I didn't see any indication of him putting up an armory, and he's only going to have a factory in the meantime. And especially if he catches with that machine shop down. Look, okay, he is playing that machine shop in the midst of that single tank. That tank is going to do nothing for him against this early economic damage. Although he already does have a Vulture and 2 Marines out in the field, he might be able to cycle those around, do some economic damage of his own. 2 Wraith being produced, and those 2 Wraith coming in at the same time will give Fantasy an indication that he's going up against a 2 starport attack. Let's see if he places the second factory. Okay, there's the second factory. Still no additional Marines, still no semblance of anti-air. He does have his second academy up, and really he's had no indication. Now building an armory, though, so he's not going to be in too shabby a position. once these Wraith push in, and I think, I'm not sure what really queued off Fantasy to really build that armory. It could have been just part of his normal build. SCV's in transfer here, and it looks like a single tank, 2 Marines, and more tanks or Vultures perhaps being built here, but I'm not seeing any additional upgrade. And the 2 Vultures, 2 Wraith now pushing across. They're not going to be in time to stop the Goliaths here. The barracks floating up ahead, kind of getting a spot at what's kind of out in the field. And let's see if Hiya can do enough economic damage. And a second tank with an SCV off the field. So it looks like the plan for Hiya here is actually to run up, push the Wraith, try to make Fantasy panic, and start building Goliaths more en masse, and be late with Siege, and then push up on the secondary. And I'm not sure that this is the best. Okay, that armory is finished. 2 Marines running up to try to bring these Wraith back. Fantasy's still going to have a decent economy to work with because he is mining out of 2 bases. The Wraith can't be at 2 places at once. He can kind of bleed SCVs. There's that tank at the front door. It looks like Fantasy is going to see the 2 tanks on the front. Let's see if he's going to have Siege in time. That should give him time to cancel. He's got a... Oh, and this is going to be difficult positioning in a bunker on the front door for Hiya. So Hiya is going to try to do a slow push contain. There's Siege being upgraded. And now let's see if well, he needs at least 1 Goliath to kind of support with this attack. There's 2 Goliaths actually out. And let's see if he's got Siege, if he's going to have Siege in time. Hiya a little too far back with that bunker, I feel, to really support this attack. There's 2 Goliaths, enough tanks. There's that 3rd tank moving out. As soon as that 3rd tank and Siege is finished, he will be able to start pushing at Fantasy. But he's stopped Wraith production altogether. This is going to be very difficult to execute, though, particularly on this map, because it's, again, 2-angled. At the very least, he needs to take that barracks out. Desperately needs to take that barracks out, because if he can take that barracks out... Oh, brilliant positioning here, though, from Hiya. It's going to make sure reinforcements have a very difficult time. The rest of the units have to stay on the ground, building another bunker to try to push forward. And if the Siege tank... Again, it's going to be critical with Siege tech and also those SCVs pushing in, and he needs to get that barracks down so additional factories are not produced. And it looks like, oh, that barracks... is going to be able to float safely back to the main. The tanks unsieging, having to fall back. They're at least going to be able to cut off some reinforcements, but between the Goliaths, between the SCVs, between everything else, maybe with that spotting Wraith, it looks like critically he's going to be able to float this back. Actually, no SCVs off the line. And really, I feel like that barracks is critical, because otherwise, that's the difference between Fantasy being able to plop down additional factories off that second command center immediately after, or Hiya having some breathing room to try to catch up in some way or form. I think if he does not take that barracks down, he's going to end up losing this game. A Vulture for Fantasy again, just able to sneak off that northern route, and that's the difficulty of Neo Harmony. You just can't. It's so difficult to get in there. It looks like that tank pop was able to take that Vulture out. Now trying to go to the north to play a little bit of a contained game here, and Hiya, I believe, has lost the opportunity. Units flooding to the north here for looks like they're flooding to the north, going to be able to take those 2 siege, or at least stop them short. Fantasy still has his 2 bases. He's still going to be able to get 2 additional factories, and momentarily he's just going to be able to overpower Hiya. Hiya not able to gain position. He's going to have to run in with all 5 tanks and try to do a desperation attack here. Looks like he's going to move the 3 in from the north and try to hopscotch those from his other tanks up, and the SCV coming off the line looks like it's going to get killed. 2 left. Let's see if there's reinforcements. They are in position to hit that command center. Not a lot of leeway here. 2 from the north, able to limit the SCV supply, but it looks like another tank taken out. I didn't see what happened to that on screen. I think this... Okay, Siege tank's on the ridge, and now Fantasy's production, I feel like it's just too strong. He's got 2 bases. He's been running for a while. That Wraith has been lost. He's going to try again at the other entrance. It looks like that barracks trying to float back. He's still hitting that command center, but it looks like Fantasy just has more troops. He doesn't have as many Siege tanks, though. Hiya desperately trying to get his own command center up. Again, not producing any additional Wraith. The SCV is flooding off the line. These are units that Fantasy can afford to lose, and that's going to allow the rest of his Siege tanks to kind of get siege position. And with that clump, oh man, Hiya's going to lose all of that. Just the splash, the clump. He was just in too difficult a position, I would say. That 1 siege tank, at least at the forward position, going to get taken out. But that's all the siege tanks. Fantasy still has 2 bases. He's still producing SCVs economically ahead. You can see V. Yeah, he knows it. He's like, yeah. And now Fantasy can easily just press forward. Hiya has nothing on the ground. Just now trying to get his 3rd factory up desperately. And I take it back. I thought Fantasy would actually be at additional factories prior to this, but it looks like he was just sticking to the tank production. Couldn't quite economically get it done with the harass there, and there's the SKT mascots. I hate them. But now it's an easy win for Fantasy. He's a much better economy. He's going to have the additional production. That barracks wasn't taken out to even force him to build that, to give any kind of delay time there. So it should be an easy push from both directions, and even though this is Neo Harmony, it does kind of have awkward map positioning, Hiya desperately needs to. This is, difficult position position because his own barracks is actually burning down. So he's not going to be able to pump and get that 4th factory really when he wants to, or he's going to have to cut troop production to get it. And this is right when Fantasy is moving forward. Fantasy not seeing these 3 tanks to the north, but Hiya cannot commit that. That's just going to be reinforcements that are pushing through. Ooh, tanks getting smashed before they're even sieged. 1 tank on the front door, that one getting picked off as well. Comsat to take out a couple of SCVs even. And now Hiya in desperate situation. 5 tanks versus 2 SCVs flooding off the line. Maybe they can provide some support. Looks like Hiya siege just a half second sooner, so he is going to be able to clean off this tank. But oh, never mind. Loses all of his siege tanks. SCVs not able to kill any additional tanks. 2 more tanks down on the line, but no more mining time here, and more SCVs getting bled, more reinforcements pushing up. That barracks now actually, that critical barracks floating overhead in that position. Additional Wraith being produced for some spotting to try to get that barracks back as well, but Goliath should be coming across for Fantasy in not too long, and he still has enough troops to really end this comfortably. Look at that secondary. Look at the SCV saturation. 4 factories just moving, and it looks like Fantasy is actually going to wind around to the north, and he's going to have that same position that Hiya had prior, where he can just kind of push up and get that ramp positioning. Kind of the same position that Hiya was aiming for, but on the opposite end. And siege tanks in range. 3 tanks actually pushing forward against just the single, and they're going to be able, with that SCV repairing, you should be able to take this out. Still some spotting for that Wraith, so that'll slow down Fantasy a little bit. It looks like that SCV trying to come up and do enough damage to, and unfortunately attacking the wrong tank here. But now the 2 Goliaths up in the mix. The Wraith don't have cloaking. They're going to have to back off. 1 taken out and 2 more tanks on the right. Hiya has nothing on his front to defend at all anymore. And yeah, he's running into superior economy, superior production. The cheese was clever, trying to get basically more Goliaths produced instead of siege tanks and utilize that brief window where he had siege tech, but that's going to be GG. 3-2. SKT almost has a championship here. Almost is going to win it. Just straight flat, no ace matches together. Hiya looking devastated. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Moving on to the 6th set. Thanks for listening.
야, 특히 이 정명훈의 이번 승리는 앞으로 선제 경기가 남아있긴 합니다만 이재동의 컴백을 바라는 팬들의 염원을 이립적입니다. 완벽히 짓밟아버렸어요. 왜냐면 구성원이 이겨서 이재동 불러낼 줄 알았거든요.
네, 저도 이재동 구성원 선수의 경기를 정말 빠짐없이 다 봤습니다. 다 봤는데 항상 구성원 선수가 질 때 패턴이 이래요. 초반에 뭔가 짜임새 와가지고 재미실 것 보다가 마무리를 점을 못 찍어가지고 치는. 야, 근데 방알리에서도 똑같은 지금 병이 도진 거예요.
정명은 진짜 잘 싸웠습니다. 가족분들의 모습인 것 같은데요. 좀 어두운 안 보입니다만 정명. 정말 완벽히 그 분위기면 구성원 이겼으니까 이재동 나오는구나. 오늘 에이스 결정전 에이스 매치까지 가야겠구나. 이런 거를 분위기 막 끌고 가려고 하고 있었는데 정명은 완전히 저 뒤통수를 칩니다. 대단합니다. 정명은.
정말 이대로 송재욱 선수가 마침표 찍어주면은 진짜 이틀간에 최고의 활약을 한 것은 정말 정명일 것 같네요.
그렇습니다. 이러면